Welcome, I'm Karl Strom. I'm the editor of Hearing Review, and I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I also want to thank Care Credit for hosting this dinner. Without them, none of this would be possible, and I'd particularly like to thank Randy Baldwin and Amber Jaquez of Care Credit for having driven this project along with our publisher, Dana Fisher. First of all, I have to say that when I look into the audience today, I see all of these faces that I've known for 20 plus years, and it's rather humbling. I don't hesitate admitting that many of you have forgotten more than I'll ever know about the hearing aid market, but that's because you're all so old. And of course, I don't age except for my hair, which has apparently taken early retirement somewhere out in Cocoa Beach, I think. Seriously, it's with a fair amount of humility that I present this first annual Hearing Review and Care Credit State of the Industry Address. We are all in fits and starts becoming unwilling experts in explaining Christensen's disruptive technology curves and smartphones and MFI devices and commoditization, FDA guidelines, PSAPs, ASPs, vertical integration, horizontal integration. You get the idea. I don't think there's any way that in an hour's time we can cover everything in what's going on in the hearing industry. However, I did call on three experts who I have great regard for, three audiologists who I think have exceptional insider viewpoints and perspectives on the hearing healthcare market. Amin Amlani is a professor at the University of North Texas in Denton. Brian Taylor is Director of Practice Development and Clinical Affairs at Unitron Hearing, and Dan Quall is the Managing Director of the Starkey Hearing Alliance. But before we get to those presentations, I'd like to review where we are now and give you a brief executive summary of a survey that Care Credit sponsored particularly regarding pricing and the surveys that we have done in the past. Because I have very little time and a lot of information, I may end up talking fast, so I apologize for that. This is the total net units of hearing aids sold from 1979 to 2013. And I noted where we hit the 1, 2, and 3 million unit mark. We hit the first million in 1983. That was the year that President Reagan got hearing aids. And 21 years later, in 2004, we hit the 2 million mark. Last year, we almost hit the 3 million mark. We came 10,000 units short. But this year, we ought to be able to do that, God willing. But the point here is that we cut the interval between the interval marks in half by 10 years. And I guess one interesting conclusion might be, well, are we going to get to 4 million in 5 years? And of course, a lot of the industry cynics will probably say, well, the VA kicked in an awful lot between 2 million and 3 million units. And in fact, the VA did kick in 300,000 units there, but the VA also kicked in 300,000 units between the 1 million mark and the 2 million mark. So the point here is that the private market is growing, and it's growing at a pretty good clip. Of course, the industry cynics too out here will say, well, the last million was also due to big box and as well as the VA. But but you could also counter that by saying, well, the first million was from binaural usage, and we'll get into some of that as we go along here. I'll go just briefly into the methodology of the survey. We took the survey in January 2014, and we surveyed 2013 business. We got responses from 170 dispensing offices from 42 states. And I've covered most of this in my article that's coming out in the April edition of the Hearing Review, so I won't go too far into it. But I wanted to make some distinctions here. Dispensing audiologists were composed of 57% of the survey respondents, and I think probably the market is more like 65%. In terms of business stake, owners and co-owners made up 52% of the respondents, and that was significantly lower than some of the previous surveys we've had. And we also had slightly more large offices. Usually in these surveys we have 3 or 4 large offices. In this survey we had 6 large offices and 1 very, very large office, probably one of the larger independent practices in the United States. So in that case, some of the average units are, it's better to use the median than the average units per month when we're talking about that. As with other surveys, this one primarily represents the private sector, and you can see that it's also very heavily weighted toward the independents. And I generally think of independents as those dispensing practices that are either not affiliated with any group or are affiliated with an independent network, co-op, or buying group. And we had about 63% in this survey, whereas I think in terms of the actual market, it's probably more like 40–45%. 12% of the survey respondents owned practices that were affiliated or owned by a manufacturer. Another 12% were owned or affiliated with a corporate chain network. 6% were owned by a big box retailer, and 10% were non-profit, but we did not include the nonprofits in the stats that you'll be seeing here. We had a very experienced group of dispensers. The average age of dispensing was of dispensing hearing aids was 21 years. Excuse me. This pie chart shows the age distribution breakdown of the dispensers responding to the survey, and what you can see is 71% were in their 50s, 60s, or 70s. So I wasn't joking about us all getting older. Concomitantly, only 29% were under age 50. And 18% were at 19% were at retirement age, or age 65. This is the exact same information that you just saw on the pie chart compared to 2 other surveys that we did 10 years apart. A survey back in 2003 and another survey back in 1994. And what you find is that the percentages of those ages 40 or younger have steadily decreased. That's on the left side of that dotted line. And the percentages of those in their 50s and 60s have increased on the right side of that dotted line. So there are far fewer dispensers in the early parts of their careers than in the latter parts of their careers. And Barry Freeman and Ian Windmill have done some great work on this. And I think the classic article on this subject is from Barry, Dr. Freeman, in the, I think it's November, December 2009 Audiology Today. I highly recommend it. It's an excellent article. I just wanted to show the 2013 unit volume gains. And this slide is meant to also show the large dispensing firms versus the smaller ones. If you take all of those large dispensing firms, along with everybody in the survey, basically, the average aids dispensed per month from 2012 to 13 increased from 27 to 38 units, which is a very large increase. But the median increase was 18 to 20. So that's on the level of about 10%. And ignoring all of the large practices, the average went from 22 to 23%, which is right in line with what HIA 2003 unit growth was reported as. This slide shows the 20-year trend in units dispensed taken from 3 HR surveys, roughly 10 years apart, just like you just saw that age distribution graph. And there's been a steady increase in the percentage of offices dispensing 20 or fewer hearing aids per month. Conversely, there's a steady decrease in the number of offices dispensing 21 to 40 units per month. So the bottom line is that the average office is dispensing fewer hearing aids than they did 10 and 20 years ago. I'm not going to go too far into gross revenues. Dr. Amlani is going to cover some of that, as well as Dr. Karl. But in terms of gross revenues, there was a fairly wide distribution of offices, with the average being slightly less than $500,000 a year. In terms of turning to net profits, the average was slightly less than $100,000 per year, so the average profit margin was about 20%. But that doesn't really tell the whole story. For the larger dispensers in the survey, they turned a lot better profit margin, and Dr. Amlani will be talking about some of that. Bundling of products and services took place in 83% of the practices in this survey. This is slightly higher than most of the other surveys that we've done, which is a little surprising given the amount of attention that this subject has garnered. There's a lot of advantages to unbundling. However, even some of the best dispensers that I know of are still bundling their products. And again, Dr. Amlani will be covering some of this, and he shows how unbundling actually can increase the value of your products. Now we get into the pricing section of the survey. This is the typical good, better, best pricing system for dispensing offices in comparing the prices in the 5 major styles of hearing aids. On average, for the consumer, there's about a 25 to 32% change if you're going up or down any technology on the technology levels, and this extends throughout all of the styles of the hearing aids. When applying HIA data regarding hearing aid styles in the commercial market, you get an average price, and this is shown on the right-hand side and underneath those legends. You get an average price for premium products of about $2,900. For mid-level products, $2,200, and economy-level products for about $1,650. This is a pricing comparison using the same 2013 prices that you just saw with the prices from surveys, HR surveys taken 3 years ago and 8 years ago. 2010 and 2005, and so the bars are 2013 is the first one, 2010 is the second one, and the 2005 is shown in orange there. And what this shows is that hearing aid prices have, in general, decreased in the premium and mid-level technologies, where a lot of the profits are found, or traditionally found. And compared to 2008, premium prices have gone down by 10 to 12%, and in the mid-level, prices have gone down by 6 to 10%. Prices have remained relatively flat or increased slightly in the economy level, except in CICs. Excuse me. Just to also remind you that in 2005 we had an analog class. I think that was last year that HIA surveyed analog instruments, and it was the last one that we did too. And they range in price from about $1,100 to $1,300. So how much was dispensed from each technology level? Our 2013 survey says that a whopping 38% of aids came from the premium technology level. 43% came from the mid-level products, and only 19% came from economy-level products. So, and this is, in terms of the premium products, this is a significantly larger percentage than our 2005 dispenser survey, just used as a comparison. When I did a straw poll of manufacturers, the manufacturers felt that they basically said premium, they estimated premium being between 20 and 30%. But that's mostly for the entire market. But the point here is that, at least according to our survey, premium prices went up pretty substantially here. And that will also have the effect of increasing, on our next slide, increasing the average sales price of the hearing aids. So if you apply the HR if you apply all of the data to the technology levels, the HIA statistics, and the pricing that you just saw, you get an average price of $2,363 for 2013. You can this plot is of historical pricing from 1980 to 2013, with average prices shown in 10-year increments. In 1983, you can see that average sales prices were $1,064. In 1993, they were $1,145, and then they almost doubled to $2,240 in 2003. And about 2005, they leveled off, and that's what you're seeing here. And remember, this is just HR, HI, and HJ survey statistics. But basically, average prices have flattened out. And again, we need to remember that this is for essentially the private sector, commercial market, mostly independents. This is the very same data with a little bit more granularity after 2005, and this was supplied by the FONAC Practice Management Studies, and I have to thank Holly Hosford Dunn for giving me some of those data points. But you can see that the after 2005, hearing aid average sales price had actually declined, and then bounced around a little bit thereafter. It's also important to remember the Market Track survey, which is in the blue X's there. Those are out-of-pocket costs for consumers. Again, we're talking here about, in this survey, we're talking about independents and basically the list price without any discounts or anything. Market Track is out-of-pocket costs, which include discounted hearing aids, VA, and free hearing aids. 84% of fittings were binaural, according to this survey. The use of binaural hearing aids is increased in a linear fashion, and binaural, the ratio of binaural-monaural reached parity in about 1991. But at 84%, I think we're probably hitting some sort of theoretical maximum. However, the median here was 90% binaural fittings. It's also worthwhile to remember that although there are often discounts for binaural fittings roughly do double the cost of a hearing aid purchase. So instead of $2,363 for most fittings, we're talking more along the lines of $4,700. Given the relatively high prices and high rates of binaural fittings nudging average costs up, it's surprising that over a third of the patients still pay with cash or check, 37% in this survey, 50% paid using a credit card. About 1 in 6, or 17%, used a third-party financing arrangement such as Care Credit and others. And we've done many articles on the value of third-party financing, both in drawing in people who could use some help in affording hearing aids, as well as as well as moving up and down technology levels and getting the kind of hearing aids that people need to get and are recommended by the dispenser. About 8% of dispensing professionals used some form of in-office arrangement for payment. Finally, we asked what was the lowest price hearing aid available from the practice. And this might be the aid that comes out of the drawer when it becomes very apparent that the patient is fixated on price. And about half, or 47% of the dispensers, offer an aid for less than $900, but less than 1/3 offer an aid for $750. I think it's interesting that 88% of the practices offered at least one hearing aid for less than $1,500, roughly the price point for Costco's Kirkland line. But so we are competing very well with that, I think. But only 6% offered a hearing aid for less than $500. So I think there's an argument made we're not really competing in the PSAP market. Good fodder for discussion. We asked if, does this device this lowest price device, does it come with all the regular services that come with a standard hearing aid? And 84% of dispensing professionals indicated that that it did come with those services. We also asked, interestingly, do you market this device as a PSAP? And surprisingly, 8% said that they did, even though, according to the FDA definition, PSAPs are not intended for hearing loss. Finally, we asked dispensing professionals what percentage of your patients say they've tried PSAPs, and 10% indicated that 10% of their patients had tried PSAPs. The median there was 5%. So, what does this augur for the future of professionals in the hearing industry? And I admit that I feel a little bad because a lot of this information isn't exactly the most positive and uplifting. For example, it suggests that there are legitimate concerns about the number of dispensing professionals entering the hearing care field versus those leaving it. We are dispensing on average lower units per month than we had 10 years and 20 years ago. And the statements from industry executives and marketing analysts who say that ASPs are going down appear to be true, and they're probably decreasing. They appear to be flat in this dispenser survey, but when you factor in factors like VA and big box, they probably are going down. So I'm just a ray of sunshine, right? But when looking at this data in its entirety, I think three conclusions come to mind. One is that dispensing professionals of the future will need to use their talents more efficiently. The successful practice of the future, and indeed the most successful practices today, are using more technicians and support personnel to increase efficiency and fully capitalize on the skills unique to experienced dispensing professionals. I think the future will bring greater numbers of patients, less minutes of direct FaceTime contact, but more high-quality contact. Think of GPs using their physician assistants or dentists using oral hygienists to maximize the effectiveness of their FaceTime with their patients. And speaking of FaceTime, I think this trend also will gradually bring teleaudiology and patient self-programming and remote programming into play as our consumer population gets more and more predominated by baby boomers and those who are more comfortable and actually start demanding this type of technology. And this is one more reason why scale in a practice matters. This dispensing survey provides good evidence that multi-office practices are outperforming smaller ones in terms of their business success. Number two, another conclusion is that there's this panicky notion among some of us, myself sometimes, that we're all going to wake up one day and there won't be any need for dispensing professionals or hearing industry executives or GASP trade editors, And, and I think this is a kind of vague paranoia brought on by increasingly efficient first fit algorithms, the lessened need for custom impressions and RAC fittings, and better low-end, low-priced hearing aids. I think we have legitimate concerns, but I think many of these concerns are related to evolving technology and computer automation in general. Ultimately, if you're doing anything that a machine today can do, then you should be nervous. And you need to start looking at what else your skills and training bring to the table. And dispensing professionals have these in abundance. In order not to be commoditized, we need to concentrate on our value proposition to the patient. The term patient-driven doesn't only apply to the medical industry. The patient will be increasingly in charge of hearing healthcare, their hearing healthcare decisions, and dispensing professionals will need to position themselves accordingly. Like it or not, there are new products emerging from both inside our industry and from within consumer electronics that are to some extent effective and will necessitate dispensing professionals to increase the value of their offerings. And in the end, best practices will rule the day because we've proven that best practices add value and increase customer satisfaction beyond what over-the-counter devices can offer. Change is coming, but it will also have positive change. And much of that will have to do with redefining not what you do, but how you go about accomplishing it. Dispensing audiology, or hearing aid dispensing, will eventually need to move to better hearing and better communication, or what Doug Beck and Curtis Alcock referred to in our April edition of Hearing Review as maximal hearing and listening. They also presented that at the ADA conference. And don't get me wrong, I think that the bulk of your revenues will still come from hearing instrument dispensing. But the overall goal will be individualization, getting the most out of a patient's residual hearing, and allowing people to live independent, vibrant lives. In order for people to maintain independent lifestyles, they have to communicate effectively in a variety of ways to a variety of people in a variety of situations. And your services may also be needed by people with normal hearing and people who are simply looking for highly customized solutions that involve new apps, ALDs, alerting devices, text telephones, oral rehab services, auditory retraining, hearing conservation, tinnitus, and taking advantage of all the myriad evolving telecommunications that are coming at us all the time. All of these could be thought of as technologies that assist people for living in place, healthy aging, and maintaining independent lifestyles. And these will be the buzzwords of the next 10 to 30 years. So with the aging population, I think there will be an increasing need for dispensing professionals who provide individualized care. And the future is bright, but it does encompass change, and our industry and our professionals need to change with it. Thank you.